Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, I'm going to be looking at a distribution called Q4OS right after this. This is a challenge from Big Daddy Linux. Again, a customer that is a government entity had asked Big Daddy Linux and that group to evaluate Q4OS to see if it would be a viable replacement for Windows, I guess it's Windows XP, that they're currently running in their environment. And so I thought I would look at it, give my 2 cents on it, and maybe take a little bit of a business spin with it as well, and talk about what my impressions overall are with this release. So let's dive in a little bit. What is Q4OS? It is based on Debian Linux, and the version that is currently out, which is based on Buster. So that would be Debian 10. The first development release of this OS was in July of 2014, and they did have some that was not a full production release. They didn't achieve that until version 1.2, according to their website, in April 2015. It's the latest information I can find. Fairly new distribution then. They seem to follow the production releases of Debian more or less. Sometimes they're right on it, sometimes they're a few months behind, but that's okay. I mean, that's normal when you're taking a baseline release that has long lead times like Debian does. Debian 9.2 is the current, was released in October of 2017, and QoS 2.4 Scorpion came out that same month. Debian 10.2 was released in November of last year, and Q4OS 3.10, which is based on the 10.2 Debian, was released in January of 2020. So a little bit of a lag, but not bad. I mean, considering that December is pretty much of a break, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It offers hardware support, of course, for x86 64 platforms. They do support Raspberry Pi. They have support for Pine 64. Also the Rock 64 chip, which of course is the same one in the Pinebook Pro. I have not tried that. I did install it on Raspberry Pi. It seems to be working quite well. However, I don't think that's the workstation environment they're intending to use, and so I'm going to be basing this review on the x86 platform, of course. So Q4OS Centaurus Plasma is the one I'm going to be looking at. Now, they have an older version based on an older version of KDE called Trinity, but Trinity, as far as I can see from their website, appears to be phasing out. And so it would be difficult for me to recommend using a platform that old, simply because it's a dead end. It's not going anywhere, and they would just end up having to redeploy the workstations anyway in order to update to Plasma. So I think probably I would just start with Plasma and move on from there. The hardware requirements for Plasma is a 1 gigahertz CPU, 1 gig of RAM, and 5 gig of disk. That's probably a little optimistic for KDE. Hardware requirements for Trinity, however, does support 300 megahertz CPUs, 128 megabytes. Yeah, that's right, megabytes of RAM, 3 gig of disk. Like I said, I did not look at Trinity, and my reasons you already know. I'm going to make assumption. I mean, I made these assumptions initially. This is a government customer, and I learned this on Saturday when BDL had their initial reviews and passes through it. So my assumption, this is, if it's a government entity, then that could be quite large. I mean, that's possible that could be quite large, and of course they probably have a professional IT staff in order to support this. So anyway, they're wanting to replace Windows XP on their workstations with the Linux distribution. Now, government entities typically don't operate 24/7. I do not know what the needs are for this organization, so I'm going to include support costs in this evaluation for both. both a normal 8 to 5 environment, which is fairly typical. Usually governmental offices operate about 10 hours a day in the Department of Defense and about 8 hours for the civilian branches of the government, just like any other business would run. I'm going to also assume that they're going to need remote access given the current climate with the health problems that we're having today. I'm going to assume that in order for them to work from home, they'll need remote access to do that, and they'll need that support. They'll need support occasionally after 5 p.m. and probably on weekends for maintenance, because that's off-hour maintenance, which is typically the cycle that occurs in corporations. You do not take the environments down during normal business operations, of course, because that would be disruptive. A customer has limited server needs. I'm going to assume that this is a base install for email, calendar, email support, file sharing, internet firewall. They probably, I'm guessing, are probably more web-based with their systems. I'm going to assume that. I don't know for sure. Don't know what their business climate is. I did not get a chance to interview the customer. Normally, before I make any kind of recommendations, I would interview the customer, find out what their goals are, right? I mean, that's the first thing you want to start with for a successful project. What are they expecting to get out of this? I initially said no special security accreditation is required, but since learning they are a governmental office, they will at least have FIPS -4 accreditation requirements as any, if I'm assuming this is U.S., that they would at least have that basis and would need that kind of accreditation before allowing the systems to go live. They probably have additional accreditation requirements. I just don't know what those are. Again, normally I would ask during an interview what those are, because those do add up into what kinds of things have to be done. But since I'm assuming they have a professional IT department, my assumption would be they would handle that accreditation themselves. What kind of features are on the desktop? Well, the Linux kernel version is 4.19. Many might think that's an older release, but that was the last LTS release of Linux that was available to Buster, to Debian Buster. So that's not unusual to see one quite that old, but it's not horribly old. In fact, as Phoronix discovered, anything pretty much past 4.16 is slowing down because of the mitigations with the Intel issues with Meltdown and all of those kinds of things. So the desktop environment is KDE Plasma. This is a relatively new release of Plasma. It's 5.14.5, so it's not too far behind the actual Neon releases. KDE Framework is 554.0, and the Office Suite is LibreOffice 615.2. Now, that is a little bit old, but not concerning. The Google browser version is 81.040.044, which I know is fairly recent. And then the Firefox ESR version is 68.7. As far as I know, that has the latest security update in it, which was released back in April. So March. So that's not real old either. So they've kept up pretty well, in spite of the fact that they're using older repos from Debian. But you have to remember that they also have their own repos. Q4OS has their own repos as well. VPN support is optional, and the OpenVPN version, this would be for remote access. Of course, you would use a VPN to get in through the firewall. 247, you probably would have a number of other things on that firewall as well in order to ensure that the workstations are who they say they are. Firewall on the workstation is, I don't know what the version is for that. It is UFW is the default, but I did not check. Maybe I'll look as we do the install today, but I don't know if I will or not. Again, I would assume that the IT department would take care of the firewall rules, because those can be quite complex in governmental settings. Network application is Network Manager. They also have a custom Q4OS Network Manager that I noticed that they were deploying. They also enable a number of non-standard protocols, and I assume that's all part of their the Q4OS desktop. But DCCP I have not seen enabled. SCTP Remote desktop service, RDS, is enabled. And of course, you would expect that for remote access. Hopefully, they block that off from the outside, because you do not want RDS available directly from the internet. You would definitely have visitors. CUPS is enabled. VLC is enabled, as well as SMBD, which is Samba, and then the name manager support NMBD, which is its partner service. Our syslog is enabled by default. Of course, you know my opinion of most R utilities. R utilities are not secure. Our PC bind is also enabled because NFS is up as a service, and then snapd is also running. So yeah, I don't know what the government's requirements would be there, but I know that SMDB has some special requirements. I know NFS has some special requirements as well. As for the other two front protocols, I don't know if I would necessarily enable those unless I really needed to. Compilers, there are some compilers installed on the system, Python 2, Python 3. Python 2, I don't know why we're bothering to put that on anymore. There is no support for that. But Python 3 is there. I did see an indication that GCC is installed, but could not get to it from the command line. So it may be only enabled for certain groups, which is good. There's also the GDB. Again, same thing. Could not get to it from the command line as a user. That may be only enabled for certain groups. JavaScript and Lua is also installed on the system. Same thing. Could not get to them directly. There is a Node.js framework, and I know that that is concerning to some governmental agencies. Don't know if they are one of them. MariaDB server is installed, and it is running, and I'm assuming that that would need to be hardened in order for it to remain running on the system. Not sure why that is. It might be something that Q4OS is using. It might be something that is needed for, I did not investigate that. I just saw the service running. UFW is running, it's not configured, and IP tables is installed and running as well, but it's not configured either. All the ports are wide open. Password accounts with system privileges are not allowed to log in. That's good. That's a good start. They don't have any of those allowed to get to a shell. Fully featured desktop profile. When you come into the system, there is a pop-up, and you'll see this when I go through the install. There's a pop-up as to whether or not you want to configure the workstation with the desktop profile, and there are a couple of options in there. I chose the first time through to install the full desktop profile. It took quite a while to install, probably about 15 minutes, maybe 20. Before it completed, and it put a number of applications on the system that would probably be typical in an office environment. It also configured a number of libraries. It also installed Java, and again, don't know why that is. Could be that some of the menus used by Q4OS are, and some of their UIs are Java-based. Again, haven't investigated that, but they are deploying Open Java, which is version 11. That is concerning because that is a security vulnerability, and they probably would want to go to 13 in order to avoid some of that. So, but that is current for version 11 as of January the 14th. But I probably would be looking at a little bit newer, and I might even look at Oracle's Java to deploy in place of the Open Java, simply because of the speed difference in execution. There's a number of there's a lot of libraries that are installed with the Java apps, and a lot of DOM, XML, XSL libraries that are going out, which of course can be sources of vulnerability. They have been in the past. There's a lot of Linux libraries, and there's also a full suite of printer drivers. So if you elect to go that way, you're probably going to end up pulling some of those packages off, because typically in most environments you only want to deploy what you need. So maybe that is not the best option to use to deploy the system with, but I just wanted to see what it was going to do to the system. So in total is about, after you do that, there's about 1,850 D packages installed. Q4OS uses Debian and Q4OS repos. We mentioned that already. Hardware utilization after full desktop profile is installed. Memory is about 750 megabytes with KDE and K-Console and Glances running. Not horrible. Not horrible at all. And when you bring up Google, about 1.12 gigabytes of memory is in use. Yeah, Google takes a lot. And 1.24 with LibreOffice Writer, Google Chrome, and Thunderbird running. So I did not configure Thunderbird. I just brought it up to have it resident in memory. Disk, about 6.5 gigabytes. Disk storage, again, not horrible. On my system with 4 cores, 8 threads, it's consuming about 1% of the CPU at idle. So, and that is indicative of the service types that are running. So not a horrible load, not terrible. Obviously, not terrible. The website, as far as customer support is concerned, the Q4OS website is unclear about what support levels they provide and the costs that they charge. But they do indicate that commercial support is available. I'm assuming that it's more than just customization. It's also some kind of ticket or phone support. I don't know. So without that information, it's really hard to tell whether or not I would recommend this for a business. I mean, business is going to need at least support within normal business hours and some optional support occasionally for after-hour and weekend support, because that is typically when IT departments do their upgrades and updates to the system. So, and usually there's some form of maintenance window that occurs on an emergency basis, and that can occur at any time, of course, if you have a power supply go out on a server or whatever. But typically on workstations, they will just work on those during normal business hours as time allows. They indicated that they are seeking business partners to accelerate their development, which is good. I'm just looking at what they had said on their website, which is good. They do, so you can submit bug reports via SourceForge, and it looks like that bug tracker is fairly active. I did notice a number of open tickets, but that's probably normal after a release this new to see that, so I'm not concerned. So let's, I guess at this point, we should probably go take a look. So I'll cut over to my full screen here. I am going to put this on a VM. The kernel is too old for me to run this on hardware. At least my NUC 10 will not come up. I can tell you that right now. It's too old. But let's go ahead and create a new one. I already have it installed there, as you can see, but we'll put up a new one to start from scratch. Again, the one I am going to deploy is the one with KDE Plasma. I'm going to modify this a bit. Like I said, I think the 2 gig is a little optimistic. 21 gig for a disk is more than enough. And it allows me to go into the live environment, which I will do. And live environments, of course, are usually in memory and not persisted. So if you make any changes here, they will disappear the next time you boot into the live environment. So KDE always has this slow initial startup, but this is something unique here, and Rocco's pointed this out as well, that it was the first time he'd ever seen this in a release, and this is the first time I have seen this in a release as well, where it will say, hey, do you want to change your monitor window to be a little bit bigger? And so we'll apply that, and we'll say okay. And then eventually KDE should start up. So KDE takes a little housekeeping to bring up for the first time. And so we're up. We have a wired connection to the internet. And I'm not going to bother with this right now. I'll go into the more explanation when we actually get this installed, because I don't want to do anything to the system other than install the baseline. And this is Calmary's. I don't know, but I assume it's probably modified by Q4OS. It looks pretty standard Calmary's to me. They do only support BIOS. That could be a problem for them in the future. because most of the machine, I mean, BIOS legacy is going away. I mean, the last couple of machines I have purchased barely support BIOS legacy, and there's usually some pretty significant hoops to make it work. Now, it is setting up a fairly large swap partition, which is based on probably the amount of memory I have given. It looks like it's the 2X model, 2X plus half a gig model that it's following to do that. I could test that and go back, but that's probably way too much for this size. I probably, if I was doing this for a real deployment, would adjust that down. There's no need for a swap to be that big. Not anymore. You do need some swap if you want, if you don't want it crashes, or having applications get thrown randomly out of memory. We've talked about that before too. So I'm going to just call this Q4OS 1, and then do I want to log in automatically without asking for a password? And that would be no. We're going to do that. So we'll go ahead and install this. This will take some time, and so I will be back. I'll pause the recording. Okay, so we're all done, and we're ready to restart. I'm going to see if this follows the Debian model, and we'll restart without having to actually punch the CD-ROM out or the ISO file out of its slot. Loads a RAM disk. Okay, so we've come up to the SDDM login window. Oh, caps lock is on. So again, this is now setting this up on the actual environment of the disk. So yeah, KDE will again take a little bit longer. I'm going to go ahead and set this the way it should be. I like this feature. I wish more of the distributions would do that. And so here's where we end up here. This is the desktop profiler, and this is custom to Q4OS. So if you can say, oh, I'll just do this myself. I can set up a basic desktop, and the last time I did this took about 45 minutes to do a fully featured one. Let's try this one. This is a starting configuration. It has some initial applications. It's a lightweight, slim desktop with some common utilities, tools, and libraries. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this go. I'll probably come back. This bar down here is meaningless. This progress bar, I think it's just eye candy. Yeah, we're already about almost halfway through already, so I think I will just let this go. Of course, it's going to turn around and install all this. This is just bringing down the packages that it needs. Much cleaner environment than the full, but yeah, I mean, I can show you the full environment. I have that. I saved that VM off as well, so I can show you that. But for now, I think we'll just do this. Yeah, this is going to take a while. I'll be back. Okay, so it's finished, and it's telling me that I should reboot as soon as possible. And it goes ahead and says, click OK to reboot your computer. Now, very similar to the way Windows used to do it back in the day. Okay. See how KDE usually doesn't take that long as it does on its initial setup. So, yeah, KDE is normally pretty quick to get to the desktop. So I'm just waiting for the menus to come up. So if you want to get back into that desktop profiler, it's right there. And yeah, and then you can pick and choose what you want. And you can also install additional desktop environments. And let's see, I probably have to click this first. And you have a number now. As many of you know, if you're running KDE or GNOME, it's probably not a good idea to mix environments. So I'm not going to do that. So over here, I have a chance where I can install some applications. These are some of the ones it's presenting. Now there's Firefox. That's probably going to be the ESR model. And I think I can also, let me see if I can, nope, can only do one at a time, I guess. Let's see if I can do, nope. Nope, just one at a time. So let's see. Let's see what actually is installed already. So we just have the default Conquer browser, which is useless. We don't have LibreOffice. We have our system setting panel. And we have some basics. So this is basically a scratch layout for the system. And at this point, yeah, anything you would want, you would have to install. So let's go ahead and install that package. I know there's another way to install packages, so I'm not going to criticize this. It's checking it, it's installing it. Normally, I would prefer to select the packages I want. I'll check the package manager and see if I can do it that way, which is the other alternative. I'll do this one first, and then we'll try the package manager. I just prefer to, select the ones I want and just let it run. Then I can go away, grab a cup of coffee or something. I don't have to sit here and do them one at a time and get that built up the way I want the system built up. I know that some other, I don't have obviously an NVIDIA pass through, but I know some of the others said that it did pop up. If you have an NVIDIA card in your system, it will come up during the install and say, hey, do you want to install the proprietary drivers for this? The other comment, there's no way to look at the information for that. I think they said it was 418. I trust that that is correct. And you have Skype and Gparted. Ocular, of course, is for PDFs. You have Wine if you're running Edition. Now, that's not necessarily the best way to run Windows applications, but it does work. You can also install VirtualBox. There's Krita, which is a nice image manipulation program. There's also Pigeon, which is, I don't know if they have the secured add-ons to that. There's Kden Live for video editing, Inkscape, GIMP, Calibri for EPUBs, Audacity for audio. It's kind of strange that VLC. They do have a fairly good selection here. I'd be leery of that one. I'm always worried that when I see multimedia codecs, it's going to throw Flash out there because I don't want Flash. Now, I don't know why that is taking so long. Firefox doesn't normally take that long to install. Okay, so we're done. Let's go see if that's ESR. I would imagine it is. I know you can go get the other version of Firefox if you want. Let's just look. I'm going to guess this is probably ESR. No, that's the full version. So 73.01, that's pretty new. And so Q4OS is doing a pretty good job of keeping up with some of the latest. Now, it's probably not the very, very latest, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I mean, at least you're past there was a couple of versions a couple months back that had security flaws in Firefox. So, yeah, not bad. Let's go to the package manager and see what we got. Oh, I have to install it first. Okay. Discover Software Management Suite. I'm assuming I have to do that. So that's kind of good if you want to control. I mean, if you're setting up a workstation for for users that was being controlled in a corporate environment, you would not want to put things like this on the system, because you don't want the users. I mean, there are compliance guidelines for the government as well, and they do enforce that. So I don't know about their customer. I have no idea, I mean, what their particular ones, but I know that in the entities I have worked with, they do have compliance checking that they do. So if a user doesn't install something, they uninstall it automatically. And typically, if it gets bad enough, they'll just roll a new copy of the OS out over top of their current one, taking their work with it. I have seen that happen. Yes, I have seen that happen. Okay, so now can I get to the package manager? Yes. And these are the add-ons, color scheme. Oh, this is, well, all that. Okay. So this allows me to decorate this any way I want. Now, one thing that while we're in here, let me do this first before we get into that. What I want to do is get LibreOffice installed. So we'll do this. We'll get this going. This will probably take a while. So while it's doing that, I will go check and look at. There was some settings, I guess, in Trinity that allowed you to give this kind of a look and feel for Windows. And it was kind of a switch kind of thing. I don't know if it was on this. Let's see if it's on this. Let's move this out of the way. Switch kickoff to start menu. So that must have been it right there. It's only available for Trinity. So that answers that question. Yeah, so it kind of switched the Q4OS into a look and feel that was similar to XP, which is kind of interesting. But however, it's not available on KDE. I don't know if Windows users would be all that concerned. I mean, they could decorate this similar down here to Windows. And they could decorate the Windows types to be more Windows-ish if they wanted to as well. So, yeah. Has a nice hover help. This is really well thought out in how they've done this to make it easy for people that are new to Linux. Now, Debian is not the first place you would want to start with someone new, but it looks like Q4OS has done a fairly impressive job about setting this up. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is drop to the command line like I always do. I'll install my apps that I want. I just want to put out a couple of baseline apps. Now, I probably would add some kind of email handler to this. I don't know if it would be a Thunderbird or not, but I would probably put out that. I would assume that they have some kind of email server that they are using. I don't know what that is. Typically, it is a Windows server that is handling their mail, but and the government, but not always. Not always. Can't count on that. The offices do have some autonomy on how they do things, so depends on the standards of the office that this would be deployed in. But again, that's not a detail for me to worry about. That's a detail for the IT department to worry about. So, as we would say, that's an implementation detail, not for me. So while that's going, let's go ahead and see if I have a terminal window available to me. And that should be under Utilities. Yeah, okay, it's updated. Well, that's nice. It's probably because that's running. I can't get access to it until it's finished. Oh, it's done. Okay. Let's see if it'll now let me have access to the Utilities window. Yes. I don't have a terminal yet, unless it's under System. Oh, I do. I would have hoped it would have had one there. All right. So, yeah, typical KDE. Always have to do this. Let's get a standard terminal size here. There we go. So I probably would go in, let's see, settings, edit the current profile. And let's see, appearance. Yeah, it's cool. I probably would make this font a lot bigger though, especially since you guys are looking at it. Okay, so we'll apply that and we'll do okay. All right. Let's do an APT. And I know it's done this already. Let's see if it has me in sudo. It does. Let's see what I have. Do I have HTOP? Yes. It's already installed. 613 meg. That's with the thin. That's with the thin install. And I'm assuming they don't have glances either. So, yeah, they don't. So we'll go ahead and put that on too. This shouldn't take a whole lot of time. I'm going to look through the, when I'm done with this, I want to look through the settings and see what they actually have. Let's see what we got here. Oh, nice. Okay. I just want to look and see. Oh, so there's my packages that I can install. So this would be more familiar, and probably, I'm guessing this would not be available to the users. So, yeah. And of course, then you can click into it and find out what version of this that you're installing. I don't need GVim, but you might. Blender 2.7. There's some add-ons. Let's see if there's one that's kind of windowish. I can make it look like a Mac. I saw it go by. There was kind of a Windows-ish one. Some more Mac ones. But yeah, I'm not going to play a whole lot with that. But yeah, all right. So let's take a look at NeoFetch. See how many packages it put on. 17 or 29, that's a lot. And that, of course, was after the update and also after the Run Desktop Profiler. .419 is the OS. Let's do glances. See what the app cache is taking. 970. And then this humongous swap file. Disk space 5.4 gig is what it's taking. Let's do my usual here. That was compiled January 1st, in January 2020. So let's see, which was when they said they released this. So that makes sense. They have not bothered to change the OS release, so it still indicates this is Buster. If we go out to look at the APT sources, oh, there's nothing in there. I probably put them all in here. So, okay, the essential repository says never touch this, okay. But they are bringing in one from the Q4 repo. There's a Trinity mirror, interesting. There's the Buster, the standard Debian one. They're getting the security updates from Debian. They're getting the main and the Buster updates from Debian. And I suppose a lot, things like this is their code, because that's not part of Debian that I know of. Firefox. Firefox comes in through a PPA. Interesting. And then we have some others. So one other thing I want to check. So let's go out to my internet. Let's see if we can actually get out. Yep. And I'll go to Linus. Let's just do a quick check on Linus and see what we get. Just see what we get. I'm not expecting miracles here. It's probably going to be in the average range. Do I have, wait, let's check with Git's installed. Probably not. Now, clearly you wouldn't do this on a workstation that was being used by users. You wouldn't put Git out there. I'm going to use sudo so that it, oops. Okay. Oh, I didn't do that. My bad. There we go. We'll just run this real quick. See what we get while we're sitting here waiting for paint to dry. I'm betting most of this is going to be pretty common. I mean, Debian does pretty much the same kind of things, so I'm not expecting any surprises. Yeah, I don't know what their policies are. I'm sure they have some kind of audit server of some kind. Most of them do. 63. And what are the criticals? Couldn't find, oh, big deal. Yeah, probably. It's on the internet, but it isn't on my network, which is where my name servers are. So it's not going to pick those up. Yeah, I don't see anything in here that's really alarming. This is all pretty. Now, there is some. So it's telling me, yeah, swap partition mount options. There's probably a few things. And then yeah, so this is interesting that the DCCP, the SCTP protocols are in use and TIPC is in. This is an inter-process communication protocol. I can look up DCCP and give you the exact meaning of it, but it's generally used for congestion control. And I mean, I don't know how busy their environment is, whether they would need that or not. But, you know, it's just like anything else, and this is stream protocol. Yeah, it's like anything else. You only want to run what you need, and if you don't need it, turn it off, right? Yeah, the home directory, yeah, it needs to be set up correctly. But, no, I don't see any real surprises here. They obviously would have some compliance checking they would have to do with this, but as far as security, this is average. It's not overly concerning, so don't see any big surprises there. And then, of course, you would then spend the time and set this up the way you wanted it. I can set auto login, screen scaling, hardware info. Let's take a look at that. Oh, cool. So they kind of give them kind of a Windows kind of look at the hardware. It's kind of an old-fashioned Windows look at the hardware. And this is saying this is desktop Trinity. No, really? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe it is. Maybe it did install Trinity. But why? No, it can't be. It can't be. No, I don't think so. This looks like a bug. This looks like a pretty modern KDE to me. It doesn't look like that old. 4.5. It's 5.14. No, that is not Trinity. I didn't think so. All right. So I could go through this point by point, but I've done reviews of KDE and KDE Neon before. I don't think I need to do that again today. Let me just switch back here to my presentation screen, and we'll kind of finish this off a little bit. So what about this being used in a commercial setting? So I guess I have all the standard questions that any IT person that's responsible for a number of users in an organization and responsible to the organization. You're looking for at least some longevity. If this is in the government circle, if this was in a commercial sector, you'd probably be looking between 3 and 5 years of viability out of the OS. But because this is a governmental agency, you're probably looking more on the 10-year side of things, typically because their investment times usually run longer than the commercial support. So you're probably looking for viability out of this company for at least 5 to 10 years. Let's just say it that way. Is support available? I don't know. Is it available 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 9 to 6, whatever these hours are for the government? And then can I get optional support for off hours, weekend after 5 or 6? There's quite a bit of custom code in the Q4OS, particularly in the UIs, which do make it better. I did notice quite a bit of the libraries installed for Java. Probably the best thing to do there is to do a security risk assessment on those to see if they are at the latest versions, if there's any open vulnerabilities, and take care of those. Again, that's not for me. That's for the IT staff of this organization. RDS protocol is enabled. Our syslog is enabled. Firewall is not configured. Linus was 64 on the full desktop and 63 on the one I just ran. Not concerning, that's average. So here's the question that Big Daddy asked. Would I recommend this as a corporate workstation? Well, obviously I don't have enough information to do that. I need more information about understanding what the prices and the charges are for support from Q4OS, what they offer, and how that system works. And I know they do have a bug tracker on SourceForge, and it seems to be active. Let's look at Red Hat, for example. Red Hat offers, and I noticed that there was some people that said, oh, why don't you just go to Red Hat? Why don't you just go to Ubuntu? You know, people always forget, it's not just technical reasons why you select desktop OSs. There is a business financial side to this as well that you have to be cognitive about. And so let's look at that for a minute. So Red Hat support, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. That's all they offer. $300 a year. We'll just say it's $300 a year. And if I was installing this on 10 workstations, that's going to cost me $9,000 over 3 years. So, and I'm sure that there are price breaks for, as you add up. I mean, I've dealt with Red Hat before. There are price breaks on everything. You can negotiate prices with them, but this is what they advertise. Ubuntu has a number of options. There's Desktop Essential, which is about $25 a year per workstation. No phone support, no ticket support. So all you're getting is security updates for this. And you get those anyway, by the way, on the free. So I'm not sure what is different about that particular entry. So I'm not going to comment whether it's good or bad. Just that's what it is. Desktop Standard, $150 a year per workstation. You have to order a minimum of 20 of those. It's 24 hours a day for 5 days a week. They don't say whether that's Monday through Friday. I suppose that's negotiable at the time that you set up your contract with them, what 5 days you need. It is a 4 to 24-hour response time on support tickets, and they do have a severity system, and I'm assuming that severity system determines the response time that you get. So you're talking about $9,000 for 3 years, about the same cost, a little bit. Red Hat's just slightly less. I mean, it's only $1 cheaper per year. So it's about $3 off of that. So let's just say it's $9,000 for both of them for 3 years for 10 workstations. And then there's Desktop Advanced. I don't have it spelled right there. It's Advanced. It's $300 per year per workstation, a minimum of 10 that you have to order. That gives you 24-hour by 7 days a week support. 1 to 12-hour turnaround time on support calls, or response time, as they say. Again, about $9,000 for 3 years for 10 workstations. Now, The desktop standard, since you have to buy 20, it's the same amount of money. It's $9,000, even though of that 20, you're only going to, let's say you use 10 in this example. I don't know what their workstation count is either. I'm just comparing this to Windows. So Microsoft Windows, if they were to go to Windows 10 Enterprise, that's $300 per workstation up front. It's a one-time cost. And then Microsoft charges, their licensing fees are all over the map. This is not cast in stone because they, again, like any other vendor, will negotiate based on quantity. So, but this is what they advertise. $50 for the first year per workstation, $100 for the second year per workstation, and $200 per workstation for the third year. So you're looking at about $5,000 for 10 workstations over 3 years, if my math is correct. Quite a difference in price, and it's no wonder that Linux workstations have not been able to unhinge Microsoft Windows. The cost model isn't viable, guys. Hello, Red Hat. Hello, Ubuntu. Your cost model is not viable to replace a Windows desktop. Sorry, but it's not. That's out of whack with reality, and you guys need to realign your price structure to become more competitive with Microsoft Windows if you ever hope to unhinge them out of that environment. I don't think they really care, though. I don't think this is a model that they neither want Red Hat or Ubuntu really care about because they are pursuing the server markets really heavily. But but if they wanted to make money off the workstation environment, and there's certainly some reasons why they might want to go after that right now, especially with Windows 7 now being end of life, and also 8 is coming up. That will go end of life, and a lot of users just do not want to go to 10. If Q4OS is competitive with or cheaper than Windows is, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend this, even though they are a small company. I can't make a final recommendation on this. I can just tell you that Q4OS seems to be solid. It's based on Debian. Debian is a solid release. I've never had any issues with Debian and never been afraid to deploy it in a commercial environment. Debian is used in the government today. It already has a following, which means that it already has certifications. And so that would pave the way for this to go in very smoothly with the security folks. I don't know what the security entities are that monitor this particular organization, but I can tell you if you've already got somebody that's there, they're already on a similar version, that's going to pave the way to get this swept through the approval process very quickly. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this for today. I just don't have enough information to really, to say, oh, yeah, I'd recommend doing this. I can't. But, one thing you need to do, you realize you have to look at your cost comparison over time. I mean, a lot of people complain that Microsoft isn't cost viable. And in comparison to other desktops, like what the two big guys are charging, they're more than viable. They're better, a lot cheaper. So I hope that Red Hat and Ubuntu take an active look at this. I mean, if they are really serious about getting to the desktop in commercial environments, and by the way, that is the way into the home. If it's in the commercial side, it will go to the home. If it's in the universities, it will go to the home. That's just the way things work. If Dell and Lenovo and HP start seeing demand for Linux, guess what? They're going to start deploying their laptops and their workstations with Linux options available for those. So it's all chicken and egg kind of problems. Unfortunately, the amount of users that are on the workstations for Linux today is not big enough to get the attention of the hardware manufacturers. But if the commercial side starts to move toward it, and if it's viable and it's a cheaper solution, you want to get commercial or business attention. Money works. That's a good way to get their attention. Money is a good way to do that. That will definitely do it. Hope you enjoyed this today. And if you did, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you again real soon. And bye for now.